This is Business Incorporated on Channels Television, and we're glad to have you. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. Thank you for joining us. Coming up on the show, Quantum Global cries foul as Angolan fund seeks more asset freezes. A National Bank of Egypt seeking to raise $600 million club loan. Uganda brings forward pipeline final investment decision to 2018. Let's get started now with the markets, and the new trading week started positively for some markets here on the African continent. At intraday, South Africa's JSE index was outperforming its peers, followed by Egypt. Both were up 0.88% and 0.21% apiece. However, the market in Nigeria was in the red at intraday, down 0.13%. Nairobi closed down 0.17% on Friday. And in the Middle East, Dubai stock markets rose at intraday, backed by gains in key blue chip stocks and strong corporate earnings. The Dubai index added 0.57% at intraday, fueled by gains in property stocks and financials. Lender Emirates NBD was up 0.5%. Emma Properties jumped 1.4%, while its unit Emma Development climbed 0.9% after the development firm recorded a net profit of 819 million dirhams in the first quarter of 2018 versus 506. In Saudi, the main index dropped 0.10%. In Abu Dhabi, Etisalat lost 0.6% and Alda Properties declined 0.9%, pulling the main index 0.34% down. Qatar index lost 0.31% as lender Masraf Al Rayan shed 0.7% and Bauer Real Estate fell 0.8%. And in the U.S., stock index futures posted solid gains ahead of Monday's open as investors prepare for more economic data and corporate earnings. At around 6 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow futures rose 119 points, indicating a higher open of 134.81 points. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 futures also indicated an upbeat start to the session for their respective markets. The moves in pre-market trade came as markets overseas ticked higher. More earnings are scheduled to be released in the U.S. this week. On Monday, Allergen, McDonald's, Aconic, Public Service, AK Steel, and Texas Roadhouse are some of the major names expected to announce their latest figures. In data, personal income and outlays are due out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by Chicago Purchasing Managers Index at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time, pending home sales for March at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Survey at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And President Donald Trump will welcome the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari to the White House, where the two leaders are expected to talk about topics including economic growth, security, and fighting terrorism. Although speeches by the U.S. Federal Reserve are scheduled to take place today. And in Asia, stocks closed higher on the last trading day of the month as investors focused on a mix of ebbing geopolitical tensions, robust earnings, and economic data. South Korea's benchmark Kospi index gained 0.92% to close at 2,515.38, with gains seen in steel makers, automakers, and oil-related stocks. In Australia, the S&P 200 edged higher by 0.49% to 5,982.70 as the utilities and heavily weighted financials sub-indices advanced, cancelling out slight declines in the materials and energy sectors. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index recorded more convincing gains, with the benchmark advancing 1.71%. The financials and property sectors led gains before the market closed, with mainland banks climbing after reporting net profit growth on Friday. Meanwhile, markets in Japan and mainland China were closed. The moves higher in the region came on the back of U.S. stocks finishing the Friday session little changed despite strong earnings as technology shares pulled back. And in Europe, equities hovered around the flat line in morning trade, the last trading day of the month, as investors digested merger news and focused on earnings. Ulrich Bartz, my colleague in Frankfurt, has more to tell us. Hello, Ulrich. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Hi. Thanks. Good to see you.
Right. A raft of business combination news. Let's start with the UK's Sainbary and ASDA tying up in a $10 billion deal. What's the sweetener in this deal?
I think it's twofold. A, the price. Walmart, which owns ASDA, is being offered a significant amount of shares in Sainbary, plus cash on top, and that's an attractive deal in a highly fought-over market. German discounters Lidl and Plus have made it, Aldi have made it very difficult for the established supermarkets to really grow profitably much further. So this seems like a good combination, and that's the second part. Take number 2 and 3 in the market, Sainbary and ASDA, and make them number 1, and you get 30% of the market share. And that means a lot in the food retail business, not only in terms of price setting ability towards customers, the people that come into the stores, but also to the suppliers, people like Nestle, for example, Unilever, all the companies, also local ones. The market seems to be lapping this up. Sainbary is going right up. It was up by up to 20% during the morning, up to a 4-year high. It's not quite there anymore, but still gaining tremendously, and it's putting pressure on the competitors' shares. Both Morrison's and Tesco are going down.
Now, in the telecom space, T-Mobile has put about $26.5 billion on the table to take over Sprint, betting on networks as a game changer. How will this takeover change the sector's landscape?
If this goes through, it can drive technology forward even quicker, put perhaps more pressure on number 1 and 2 in the United States market. That would be AT&T and Verizon, because, of course, together they will have more money to invest in new technology, to bring it to the customer and to have a chance for the customer to pay them enough to get the investment back. And that's also one of the driving moves for this, in order to be able to invest more. They're pooling their resources. Being number 3, it's questionable, though, that perhaps the authorities in the United States will give the green light on this in terms of competition quality. Although being number 3, still being smaller than number 1 or 2, looking at it from the outside, it seems not viable for competition authorities to say no. But there is the Trump administration, and these are 2 foreign owners of both T-Mobile USA, that's Deutsche Telekom here from Deutschland, from Germany, where I stand, and SoftBank of Japan for Sprint.
Well, still in the U.S., interest rate decisions by the U.S. FOMC is on tap for Wednesday the 2nd. What's analysts and traders' consensus looking at the current market situation, in particular with U.S. Treasury yield?
The Treasury yield is the central focal point, I think, for the markets in these days and weeks, and it will remain one of the focal points for this week. And of course, then also the FOMC meeting, where we'll hear the result on Wednesday evening U.S. time, or Wednesday afternoon U.S. time, Wednesday evening European time. And the Treasury yield has gone up quite quickly. It spooked the markets. And if it stays around 3%, the market has recovered from that. But let's see how it goes forward. And that depends in part on the statement that the Fed will issue after the meeting. If it spooks the markets, if the insight given points in some way to an accelerated raising of interest rates, and that could put some liveliness here into the market. That's an understatement, of course. It could cause trouble here. At the moment, people don't think that the FOMC or the new Fed Chairman, Jerome Powell, is in any way interested in spooking the markets. They want a quiet market. They want to be able to do their homework and their work in peace and quiet, and raise rates at the rate they think is comfortable and adequate. There's no doubt, though, that inflation is increasing. putting pressure on rates. Oil is going up. Wages in the United States are going up. Raw materials are becoming more expensive. It'll be an interesting meeting. No press conference this time, so people don't really expect to move. But for surprises, people are always a little bit afraid of that when the Fed meets.
Yeah, I know that. Well, let's wait and see what happens on Wednesday. Thank you very much for your time, Ulrich.